Where are we today, Phil?
Mount Edgecumbe Park. If you look to your left, you'll see the only remnant of the Civil War in this area, the blockhouse. There's blockhouses across the water at Plymouth at Devil's Point. This is another of that period. If you look at it, it's lower down now, but in 1642 that overlooked the sea. This area has been built up since those days, big time in the Victorian era, but in the 1642 this blockhouse looked over the sea towards Plymouth.
It's quite obvious with the steps here, isn't it, now as well?
How high it's been built up. That wasn't moved and put there. This was built up in front of it.
So we're standing on more or less where the rocks would have been.
Yeah, this is led down towards the seafront.
This aperture here would have had a good shot at any ships at sea,
Yep.
wouldn't it?
It would have been a good lookout point. Men up in the top part. It's 2 levels. The entrance at the back, so it's safe from attack from the front. The thing about this Mount Edgecumbe house, it's close to Plymouth, but isolated. When the Civil War happened, Colonel Piers Edgecumbe, the owner of the estate, fortified his house. He didn't have a lot of soldiers here. He fortified his house and the blockhouse, and there was a battery further down, a small battery of guns that came later in the war. But in the early days of the war, Mount Edgecumbe House did not dominate Plymouth. Plymouth dominated Mount Edgecumbe House. We had a garrison under Sir Colonel Alexander Carew on Drake's Island, and we had blockhouses, Devil's Point all the way around, and Sir Thomas Wise's house on the top. They could see everything that happened over here from there. Now, being so close to Plymouth, you'd think the Royalists would have used it and maybe made an attack on Drake's Island, an amphibious attack, or on these defences over here, which was away from Plymouth. It never happened. On the contrary, in the early part of the war, Sir Alexander Carew launched a raid over here, a reconnaissance raid. He came over in late 1642, landed on the beach, moved up, couldn't take the blockhouse, so he left it. He moved up towards the house. He made a small reconnaissance of the area. He learnt that the Cornish under a Major Slingsby were in Millbrook, outnumbering him, so Slingsby moved towards Mount Edgecumbe. Both sides were moving towards each other in the night, and then realised they don't know what was in front of them, so both forces withdrew. Carew came back to Plymouth. That was the early action in this area. Nothing much happened in the early days. Both sides were wary of each other over here. It was only ever garrisoned by a small force all through the war. There was never a significant Royalist force here at Mount Edgecumbe. There was no real attacks either. There were a few raids during the Civil War, but to occupy, for a force coming from Plymouth to occupy Mount Edgecumbe House is pointless, because they would go nowhere after that, unless a whole army moved over here to invade Cornwall. It never happened. They crossed over further up the Tamar, beyond Saltash, Horsebridge, Tavistock Way, Gunner's Lake and Tavistock. They wouldn't have come across here. It would be too much to ferry an army across. So Mount Edgecumbe was left pretty much alone in the Civil War. When the Royalists, in 1643, January, when Colonel Ruthven's army crossed to, the Tamar to invade Cornwall, take on Hopton, he was defeated at Braddock Down and forced to withdraw back towards Plymouth with the survivors. Mount Edgecumbe was left alone because there was no reason for them to come this way. The most significant point in the Civil War that happened here was Colonel Martin's raid in 1644. On May the 15th, he came across here with about 300 infantry. He sent them across first, and then he joined them with 20 cavalry.
How do you think he got across here from over the...
From Kreml, they said he left from the Kreml work, somewhere in that area, which doesn't exist.
Kreml today as being over this side.
Yeah.
But we're looking back in the day when there was an east...
There was an east and west Kreml, but we're not sure where that was. People don't really know where that was. Well, that was the last I heard.
So somewhere...
Over there was an earthwork, but that could have been named Kreml work, because there was a Stonehouse work, so there could have been a Kreml work as well.
Over here, didn't it?
Yeah.
So he came across from there?
Yeah.
Right.
He came over, his infantry moved up, surrounded the house, Mount Edgecumbe House. With his cavalry, he sent them out to reconnoitre. He captured the blockhouse, and there were reportedly 2 or 3 guns in it. He captured the blockhouse and its garrison. He moved up towards Mount Edgecumbe with his little cannon. Mount Edgecumbe had cannon in there. there was reports that Colonel Piers Edgecumbe was able to fortify his house using cannon and musketeers. So to take on the big house with 150, 200 men was a big deal. It's in a good place, Mount Edgecumbe House. It's got all-round vision. Colonel Martin moved up, decided not to sacrifice his men attacking the house, so he surrounded the building and sent his men off towards Maker Church and Millbrook, because there were royalist detachments down there. So nothing much happened here in the Civil War. Only the odd raid. I mean, in 1644, the Earl of Essex invasion of Cornwall. When Essex moved into Cornwall, the Earl of Warwick, Richard Rich, was left in command of Plymouth. He was in charge of the navy. He sent a demand for surrender, for the garrison, the fort, to surrender. He said, we want you to surrender the house and everything with it. I think he was called Henry Bourne, who was left in command in the house, refused. So they said that it was reported that the Earl of Warwick bombarded the royalist guns along this seafront. There were a few little batteries all along here, and then withdrew. And then, of course, the Earl of Essex was defeated. So the plans to take Mount Edgecumbe House again fell through. We never took Mount Edgecumbe House. It was one of the last places to surrender in this area in the Civil War. After Fairfax's army marched into Cornwall, Sir Thomas Fairfax, through a man called Colonel Hammond, asked Edgecumbe to surrender. He would be given lenient terms. He surrendered. They said in about February 1646, he surrendered his garrison. That was it. Nothing else happened here. That was the end of that.
Phil.
Thank you.
Thank you.